Okay, so right after I finished up this audio recording, we had ourselves word from Mark Spector that Ken Holland confirms on Oilers Now that Draisaitl, Kane, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins will all play in Game 1 tomorrow. Why is this a big deal? Why does this actually matter? Why are we talking about this? Well, the entire commentary that I recorded already kind of goes over Draisaitl because the entire aspect of him being hurt was something that I think we needed to discuss. So you can listen to the rest of this video. It's coming from the perspective of me who does not know that Draisaitl will play. I pose up hypothetical questions. I bring up the scenarios as to what could have happened instead. So just take some time to listen and just keep in mind that I didn't know that Draisaitl would have been able to play because this audio was recorded earlier in the day. So, the Battle of Alberta starts tomorrow, eh? And we have ourselves a pretty interesting conversation to have about one of the top players that will be involved in this series. I've been saying it the entire time, that Edmonton, Calgary, this second round matchup, it's going to be fun. We're going to have 4 100-point scores going at it. Johnny Gaudreau and Matty Tkachuk of Calgary, and of course McDavid and Draisaitl of Edmonton. But when it comes to the ladder of the ladder, Leon Draisaitl, there's a bigger conversation we need to have as to what exactly the series is going to look like for him starting things out tomorrow. Now, I will say I did actually plan to start streaming again for the Battle of Alberta because that's definitely the series that intrigues me the most. But firstly, my voice is kind of under the weather right now. I think I might be getting a sore throat, which does not bode well for the idea of me making 3-hour streams, as it's already becoming just a little bit difficult to talk normally on videos. And secondly, there might be some scheduling conflicts with other things going on in my life, which could or could not also be dependent on whether or not my sore throat becomes a bigger deal, if you know what I mean. But either way, there is a conversation to be had about the Battle of Alberta before the series even starts, and it all boils down to Leon Draisaitl. There was an entire controversy going around as to whether or not Draisaitl would even be able to play Game 7 against the LA Kings. He did not take part in the morning skate, I believe, which led to a whole bunch of people speculating what the heck is going on with Draisaitl. Is he even going to be able to play? Are the Oilers going to have to face the LA Kings in Game 7 without one of their top scorers? Sure, they played Game 6 and they won Game 6 after losing out on Darnell Nurse, but Draisaitl is freaking Draisaitl. Lo and behold, he actually played. He scored himself an assist in the game. But things have gotten more interesting since then. Mostly because we had ourselves a tweet from Frank Saravelli, Daily Faceoff insider, and a guy who pretty much knows his way around the NHL. He said this: it's going to be interesting to see how the Oilers manage Draisaitl. He played through a very painful high ankle sprain in Game 7. Can he grind through the entire Battle of Alberta? Or does it make more sense to heal up for the first few games in return for the meat of the series? Now, I'm no doctor, but if I Google how long does a high ankle sprain take to recover from, the answer's not great. It says here on myclevelandclinic.org, which is the first result, it might take you 6 to 8 weeks to recover from a high ankle sprain. If you're an athlete, your return to play might take an even longer amount of time. Low ankle sprains generally heal quicker than this, so the higher ankle sprains are the ones that you should be wary of. And the fact that Leon Draisaitl already played a Game 7 with this high ankle sprain, compiled with the fact that Game 7 saw Leon Draisaitl put up his highest amount of ice time in the series, 22 minutes 38 seconds, it makes things very interesting when you ask where we go for the Battle of Alberta. Now, as we said, he did get an assist in that game. He was a pivotal part in the entire reason the Oilers were even able to beat the Kings and advance to the second round. But if you assume that this high ankle sprain is not going away, that it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks for him to recover, you gotta ask yourself, what do you do for Game 1 against Calgary? This Oilers team is a team that does need their high-octane firepower to be able to compete, and I've said it several times throughout the past few videos that Edmonton, sorry to say, you guys are a two-player team. Now, that's not to say that Mike Smith and all the other players are not valuable in any capacity, it's just the magnitude of what makes the Oilers great can be pretty much summed up with 2 words: McDavid Draisaitl. So, for Leon heading into games 1 and 2 of the Calgary series, it really does intrigue me as to where the Oilers go. You have two options here. Firstly, do you play Leon Draisaitl and you say, screw it, here are a whole bunch of painkillers, just take them, and it doesn't matter what happens with your high ankle sprain, doesn't matter if this playoff series prolongs the injury and makes it even more difficult to recover. Just go out there, score a power play goal here and there, maybe even get limited minutes, because getting him 20 minutes of ice time in Game 7 might have been seen as a bit of an overkill, but a necessary one at that to guarantee an Oilers victory. But since the Battle of Alberta is starting out at 0-0, it's not 3-2, it's not 3-1, it's not 3-3, you don't have that same necessity for Draisaitl in his game. You could go out there and say, okay, we'll just play Draisaitl for a total of, let's say, 14 minutes of time on ice, with most of those minutes coming on the power play and during offensive zone starts. We just want Draisaitl to be out there for his shot, his one-timer, because, let's face it, the guy doesn't need to be skating when he does the one-timer, he just needs to be standing in that one position. Or you could go out there and say, screw it, Leon, take some extra days to recover. It's not going to be 6 to 8 weeks that you're going to have here, but maybe an extra 2 or 3 days would be enough to placate your injury even just the slightest amount, to the point that it would actually help us out even more if you come back later in the series. The fact that the Oilers already played a desperate Game 6 against LA without Darnell Nurse and they won does say to me that there is some capacity within this team to be able to step up in the absence of your star players. Now, I don't want to go out there and make it seem like I'm implying that replacing Darnell Nurse in your lineup is as easy of a job as replacing Leon Draisaitl, because it certainly wouldn't be. It's just, the Oilers deserve the benefit of the doubt in my opinion. If they were able to go out there and step up in the absence of Nurse, why not see what happens if they sit out Draisaitl for Game 1? Because who knows, an extra day or two's worth of rest could be the difference between Draisaitl scoring a goal in the power play or completely fanning on it a few games down the line. And besides, if the Oilers end up winning Game 1, let's say they go out there without Draisaitl and they win a 2-1, super tight, really desperate goaltending fest. Mike Smith outduels Jacob Markstrom for one of these games, which I don't think is likely, but let's say it does happen. If you win Game 1 without Leon, all of a sudden I think there's an excuse to go out there and say, okay, let's sit Leon for Game 2. And again for Game 3 if the Oilers go up 2-0 in the series. You only need to play Draisaitl when you really need to win. So I totally wouldn't be surprised if they started out this series with no Draisaitl in the lineup and just hoped that McDavid, Kane, Yamamoto, Nugent-Hopkins, and everybody else would be good enough to take on Calgary, beat Jacob Markstrom, and beat that defense themselves. So both perspectives are valid in my opinion. Sit Draisaitl out because even just an extra day or two's worth of rest could be helpful, and if you're able to win without him in the lineup, then hey, take that chance, use that extra time for recovery. But then there's also the idea, okay, but it's going to take him 6 to 8 weeks to recover anyway, so why not just stuff the guy up on painkillers, play him a limited amount of ice time, see if he can get that shot underway, and just hope that he's able to score and still be effective, which I don't think he won't be able to do because it's Draisaitl, he's a really good hockey player, but this is probably one of the bigger storylines that I think needs to be discussed heading into Game 1, which will be held tomorrow. So, if you're a Calgary Flames fan, let me know in the comments, what would you want more? And I say Calgary Flames fan because, from the perspective of an opponent, I do think there is some value to be gained there in listening to what they have to say. Are you more scared of a Leon Draisaitl suiting up in Game 3 after 2 games worth of rest? Or would you rather have Draisaitl play the entire series, but still be susceptible to that Draisaitl one-timer on the power play? If you're an Oilers fan, what would you want to see more? Use the extended recovery time so that he comes back in Game 3, Game 4, the meat of the series, as Frank Saravalli laid it out, as a more effective player? Or do you want him to grind through the entire Battle of Alberta with this in mind? You also have to acknowledge that the Calgary Flames are probably going to be aware of what it is that Draisaitl is going through. I mean, Frank Saravalli tweeted it out on Twitter, and it's a public platform for crying out loud. So you have yourselves a Flames team that will likely say, okay, look, Draisaitl's hurting his ankle. Go out there and see if you can outskate the guy. See if you can pass it around him several times. See if you get into a scrum, if you can maybe do a little bit of nudging. Who really knows? Obviously, that last part is a little bit malicious, so I don't really know if that's actually going to happen, but it's just using an example to illustrate the potential danger, because if anybody on the Flames, let's say Tkachuk, goes out there and he's like, oh, that's Draisaitl in the boards battling for the puck. He's got a high ankle sprain right now. Let's go in there and just, boop, there you go, there's a little bit of a slash, and now all of a sudden Draisaitl is down, he is out, he is hurt even longer than he would have been had he just sat out. So There are definitely perspectives to go out there to combat both sides, but let me know in the comments either way what your opinions are on the matter. Draisaitl, should he play or should he stay? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this Boucher 9, and bye.